welcome to the Secret Lair Showdown Finals from MagicCon Las Vegas. I'm Maria Bartholdi. We had 32 players competing in single elimination modern. All of the competitors got a promo reg event, but for the winner, a very special promo brainstorm. I'm joined now by Mani Devuti, who'll be our expert for these games. Hey Mani, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited to see the culmination of the last of 4 Secret Lair Showdowns that we've had this year.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the players and the decks. First up, I want to talk about Anuraag Daas, who's on 4-color control.
Yeah, this is one of the newer decks to Modern. Of course, some variation of this shell has existed in the format for quite a while now, but the key addition to the deck that we've seen recently come from Wilds of Eldraine is Up the Beanstalk. It's really given the deck a new angle of card advantage, and it gives it the tools that it needs to survive in a format that we've previously seen sort of dominated by decks that attack the hand like Rakdos Evoke, where previously you may feel like you don't have enough cards to function as a control deck. Up the Beanstalk can really change that, and it's given this deck some new life.
All right, and on the other side of things, we have Living End from Nam Dang.
Yeah, Living End, maybe the less popular of the Cascade combo decks that we have seen in Modern recently. Back at Pro Tour of the Lord of the Rings, we really saw Team of Rhinos be the popular Cascade deck, again, because of its positive matchup against the Rakdos Evoke decks. But now that we're seeing maybe a shift in the metagame with Wilds of Eldraine and how things have changed, thanks to cards like Up the Beanstalk, maybe Living End seeing a rise back in popularity, considering it is still capable of doing very powerful things if your opponent isn't really interacting.
All right, there's the players and the decks. Now let's get into the action. Okay, everybody, it's time for game number 1 here in the Secret Lair Showdown Finals with Nam Dang at the top of your screen on Living End and Anuraag Daas on the bottom of your screen on 4-color control. A handshake to start out this very important game for both players, Mani.
Yeah, these players are close friends. They know each other well, so definitely a lot of the stress maybe alleviated by facing each other in the finals, but still you're playing for a lot, so certainly not something that is going to be a casual game. And for Nam, I believe he took a mulligan to 4 this game, which isn't uncommon for Living End, but it's certainly not where you want to find yourself, so already off to a rough start.
The good news is, though, hopefully we can find some more action here with all these cycling cards. We've already cycled Street Wraith and Curator of Mysteries.
Yeah, one of the issues for Nam is this matchup adds an extra hurdle for his game plan. It isn't just, can you find your Living End? It's also, can you resolve your Living End? Because Anuraag on the 4-color control deck has the best card in the format against Living End into Fairy, which you're going to see get taken by the Grave right now, but also has access to counter spells like Force of Negation that you see there. So it definitely makes it harder for Nam to just be able to execute his game plan more easily.
Right. Okay. So Nam is going to be up against it a little bit here in this matchup, Mani.
Yeah, I would say so. I think this is definitely not the matchup you want to see as Living End. Living End is looking to take advantage of the decks that maybe don't interact with you as much, just because it itself is a pretty non-interactive deck. But furthermore, once you start mulliganing, it's going to be very tough.
Yeah. So Nam was on 4 cards to start this game off. Anuraag on 6 here in game number 1. Interesting to see how much we're using these new cards like Grief and Fury and Solitude across both of these decks too.
Yeah, we recently came off of Pro Tour of the Lord of the Rings in Barcelona, where we saw Modern on full display, and it really was the story of how the format has shifted over the past few years with Modern Horizons 2, as well as specifically the Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth, which introduced Orcish Bowmasters and the One Ring and Lorien Revealed to the format. So the Modern format has really shifted. And now with Anuraag's deck, we're seeing the most recent shift to the format, which is the introduction of Up the Beanstalk, which is, not the most flashy card when you first see it, but when you realize just how much it does in these control decks, especially when you put it in older formats where you get access to cards like, for example, Solitude. that's a 5 mana card, but you're never playing it for 5 mana. So suddenly your Solitudes, which were previously card disadvantage, are now net neutral, and that's really powerful to have.
Absolutely. You saw the players clapping there. This was recorded at MagicCon Vegas, and there were other matches, including the World Championship, going on while this match was happening, and maybe some applause there for a winner at the World Championship.
Yeah, I think it was exactly simultaneous that as they were playing, Jean-Emmanuel Deprat took down the World Championship and became the 29th Magic World Champion.
A pretty cool moment there. And here's Shardless Agent, Living End, and Force of Negation there from Anuraag, Daas.
Yeah, Nam knew that Force of Negation was in hand from the grief earlier, but you're in a situation where you sort of have to brute force to try to resolve a Living End. You have limited amounts, but you have to try to go for it, because if you just sit back and give the control deck more time, they do things like get the One Ring into play, and then that's more cards, and they'll find a Teferi, and suddenly you're locked out until you can remove it. So it's just going to get worse and worse. So Nam is going to go for it at every opportunity and hope here with the forest cycling that he's doing on his upkeep, he's just going to draw another Shardless Agent or a Violent Outburst and get to go again while Anuraag is tapped out and hopefully doesn't have a Force of Negation.
And the One Ring, too, has really changed the game here in Modern.
Yeah, absolutely. It really changed the landscape. It changed the type of threats the players need to play. It changed the types of answers the players need to play. And it has really put a hamper on aggressive decks specifically, because just these bigger decks having access to multiple turns off that the aggressive deck can't really interact with can just be too much sometimes.
There's Preordain from Anuraag. 2 bird encounters now in the ring as well.
Preordain, one of the new quote-unquote additions to the Azorius control deck, as the last time we did see Modern at Pro Tour of the Lord of the Rings, it was banned. This is the unbanning that we got after that Pro Tour to the format, and there was some question as to whether the state and landscape of Modern was going to allow Preordain to actually be a playable card that has an impact or not. And with Anuraag here in the finals of the Secret Lair Showdown with 4-color control, 3 copies of Preordain in his deck. Not going to say that's the reason he made it, but it's certainly a boost to the power level of the deck, having that early game consistency.
I love the Shardless Agent getting into the red zone there, getting in for 2 on Anuraag's life total. Is going to get another hit there for another 2 with the 2 bird encounters that were on the One Ring, now up to 3. And you can see just how this snowballs, especially in favor of a controlling deck.
Yeah, on ours, Hatton, we got a glimpse at about half of it there. The half we were looking at, not doing much, but there's the other half. That's a counter spell, so he is well prepared for the next copy of Living End that goes in the stack. Nam does have access to Force of Negation in his own list, so with 5 mana, he could put himself in a position where he goes for getting the 6th land, going for a Cascade spell, having Force of Negation up as backup. Could also do it on the end step of Anuraag's turn, and then could pitch a blue card to the Force of Negation instead. So he could start setting up, but taking a look at his hand, it might just be the beatdown plan here.
All right, the beatdown plan. Curator of Mysteries hits the battlefield. Shardless Agent got in there for another 2. But here's Solitude coming into play for Anuraag.
Yeah, the hardcast Solitude, because we are at that point of the game now, is going to be a bit of a problem. That can start getting in some lifelink attacks. Anuraag is going low thanks to this One Ring that's been on the battlefield for quite a while, but I believe he does have a copy of Prismatic Ending in his hand. So at any point, if he does want to just draw 4 here, for example, and just exile it, that would be cool. And Maria, this is one of my favorite combos in the new Modern format. That's Minamo, School at Water's Edge. Which can pay 1 in the blue and tap itself to untap target legendary permanent. And let me tell you, the One Ring is definitely legendary.
That is disgusting. Here's Leyline Binding to take care of that Shardless Agent, which was looking to get busy here again. And gaining that life back of from Solitude as well. Just so good.
All right, that is an Oliphant hitting the board for Nam. One of the other new additions to this Living End deck from the Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth. Just a big creature with a very cheap and efficient cycling cost. 1 mana for mountain cycling, getting one of the shock lands in your deck and giving a large creature to the graveyard for Living End has really helped this deck even become more consistent than it was before.
Getting hit by another leyline binding there from Anuraag. Solitude into the red zone one more time to knock Nom's life total down. And Anuraag back up to 11 is going to trade in the one ring with 4 bird encounters for a fresh copy here too.
Yeah, and that should do it. The new one ring, meaning the clock on Anuraag's life total is not fast anymore, has access to the Monamo, so can just wrap up cards quickly. And I think with Nam Hellbent and Anuraag having 3 more Teferis in the deck to find eventually, this game is going to end sooner rather than later.
So how does a deck like this Azorius control or 4-color control from Anuraag get the job done in the end? Generally,
mostly it's the Solitudes. They are the quote-unquote win condition. But you do also have access to a single copy of Omnath. That card can very much close out the game. And you're trying to get the game to a point where it is determined. You're not really running out all of your threats to end the game unless you're backing it up with multiple copies of Counterspell and Force of Negation and Logic Knot. And the deck is able to do that. More often than not, you're just burying your opponent in card advantage and removal until they don't want to play the game anymore, knowing you have enough.
And there's Kahira, the Orphan Guard, even going into hand here for Anuraag. There's an Oliphant from Nam.
Yeah, with Omnath and Solitude being your only creatures, they are, of course, both elementals. So Kahira is a card that you can run as a companion, not only as an additional win condition, but also just a free card, more or less, at the cost of a sideboard slot.
Yeah, we tried to stick that Oliphant, but Counterspell is going to say no to that. Just seems like any plan Nam tries to put together here is being met with utter resistance from Anuraag.
Yeah, and there we saw a shortcutted Monamo activation. The One Ring never technically untapped, but it did get another counter and drew 2 more cards for Anuraag. So already this Monamo just upping the card advantage in a game that already feels pretty close to impossible if you're in Nam's position. So of course, in a match of this high stakes, you're not going to just concede. You're going to play it out. And with the World Championship happening behind you and the trophy ceremony and probably you and I talking on that stage over there.
Probably, yeah.
It's something that you get to enjoy being in that area while you're playing out this match.
Absolutely. And what an honor to be in this match as well for an absolutely incredible prize.
Yeah, this is the 4th one of the year, but every time we've seen these, it's just been a really cool showdown between the players, and getting a chance to win that 1 of 4 unique Secret Lair Brainstorm is really sweet.
Nam here, still trying to make his deck do his thing, cycling away. There is a Curative Mysteries and a Street Wraith. Life total down to 6 for Nam, 16 for Anuraag, despite all of those activations of the One Ring.
Yeah, just the lifelink on Solitude really just stabilizes what is happening. And Nam goes for a Violent Outburst, starting to cascade. Anuraag shows the Counterspell, and that's going to be all she wrote for game 1.
All right, we're going to head right away into game number 2. Both players on 6 here for this game. And see if Nam can force a game 3.
I'd like to say the matchup gets better for Nam post-board, but it really doesn't. Anuraag's sideboard is just more interaction pieces. Copies of Dovin's Veto, Chalice of the Void, both do a great job of just stopping the Living End deck from doing its thing. So it really is just a rough matchup. Nam's sideboard is more tuned for creature decks and graveyard decks and artifacts, not really tuned to try to deal with counter spells. He's not putting up a good fight in that situation.
Well, he's gotten rid of 1 counter spell through Grief here early on in the game, but bad news, there's another one in Anuraag's hand, as well as a Leyline Binding and a Solitude.
Yeah, this is sort of the same situation as last game where Nam is aware of the counterspell in Anuraag's hand, so now he's being asked, well, do I just brute force it? Do I have the ability to wait? One thing that I do see in Nam's hand is a copy of Force of Negation. Force of Negation is a big one if Nam has Violent Outburst, not Shardless Agent, which I believe is the Cascader Nam currently has in his hand. Because with Violent Outburst, you can cascade on your opponent's end step, and that allows you to pay the alternate cost for Force of Negation. You can't do that on your turn, so Shardless Agent, not the combo you want to go with your Force of Negation.
All right, back over to Nam here, who's going to keep up cycling. There's another Curator down and another Street Wraith into the yard here.
Yeah, I believe his hand right now, before this Street Wraith resolving, was Force of Negation, Shardless Agent, and Foundation Breaker. Just drew a Violent Outburst. That's going to be a big draw because that assembles the blue card plus Force of Negation plus Instant Speed Cascader that he's looking for. So this is minor hope for now. You see the shock of the breeding pool. He found the third land off the top, so now can pass the turn if he wants, or can just run out the Shardless Agent. I think with what he has, he may want to just pass the turn, but we'll see what the game plan for Nam is, considering he has a better understanding of the matchup and what Anuraag may be up to here.
Do you feel like 4-color control is well positioned right now in Modern?
I think 4-color control with this Up the Beanstalk edition got a lot of power in the Modern format. I think it's something that we haven't really seen put fully to the test at the higher level, just because, you know, we came off of a Pro Tour and then these editions got added to the format. So the format feels relatively unknown still as far as professional play goes.
All right, here's the Violent Outburst. Met with the counter spell and found Living End.
Yeah, I believe this was just on Nam's turn, if I'm not mistaken. So Nam won't be able to go for the Force of Negation here. Oh, no? Okay. This was on Anuraag's turn.
And there's Force of Negation, discarding that Shardless Agent to hit back.
Yeah, so the counterspell gets countered, and if Anuraag has nothing else, this Living End can resolve. I think there is a consideration for Anuraag to play the Solitude here, because it will, with the Evoke, it goes to the graveyard. The Living End will bring it back permanently, and he can exile one of the creatures that Nam brings back. And
but that's a neat interaction.
Under control. Yeah, Evoke has always been pretty good against the Living End deck, just because you get to stop your own graveyard against.
So this has Swamp Walk.
Yeah, so we're bringing a whole mess into play here for Nam, and Evoke coming back just like you said for Anuraag, who just has the One Ring in hand. That's it.
Yeah, did have a Supreme Verdict to get this board under control, but with the grief coming back from Nam, that got to discard that. And can Anuraag find a fourth land? Does find a fourth land, but doesn't want to play the One Ring just yet.
Yeah, and there's a smash.
I see. Nam did that on Anuraag's upkeep. That's what I missed, because I thought we hadn't gone to Anuraag's turn. Why hadn't he drawn a card? Nam did all of that on Anuraag's upkeep, which is why he drew a land and played the Hallow Fountain there. Okay.
And here comes the One Ring now for Anuraag, who's at 10 after that attack from Nam last turn and his growing army.
Does have protection from everything for the next turn, so Nam isn't able to pressure the life total next turn. And Chalice of the Void for 0, that will stop any future Living Ends. So if Anuraag is able to answer this board, things become harder for Nam, though he does have a copy of Foundation Breaker in hand, so that can at least answer this Chalice of the Void if he wants to.
Right, there was a draw back on Nam's turn here.
I did it. I leaned forward.
Looks like a Waker of Waves.
Yep.
Found another one. And an Oliphant into the yard.
This is one of the better cycling creatures in this deck. Not only is it very large at 7/7, but the ability to use one of your cycling creatures as a way of actually seeking your cascade spells rather than just blind cycling adds a lot to this deck.
And there was a Foundation Breaker, like you said, breaking open that Chalice of the Void from Anuraag.
Yeah, Anuraag really hoping to find another copy of Supreme Verdict here, and I believe I did see one in hand there for him. So
ooh, nice.
This attack is going to be pretty transparent here.
Attacking, interesting.
I will block with
I'll
my
block.
3/4. What could you have?
Getting in that life gain, and there it is. Supreme Verdict on cleanup duty. destroying everything. So now Anuraag back in the driver's seat.
Yeah, Nab did get rid of the Chalice of the Void, so if that Waker Waves in hand is able to find a Cascade spell or a land, depending on what the other card is,
Yeah, it's signed
he could live again here and rebuild. But if not, then that gives Anuraag all the time he needs to stabilize this game fully, and then Nab should be in a lot of trouble from there.
All right, and there was Waker of the Waves. We're going to send away this Oliphant too.
Nab
Passes
says,
the
get
turn.
a land, put it into play, and it's you.
Draw 3 cards.
One ring activation up to 3 burden counters. God, as a control player, I'm sorry. That just must be the best feeling in the world. Just drew 3 cards.
Yeah, and he did draw the Minamo as well, though he doesn't need to play it this turn. I think he has another copy of Solitude, in hand that he's able to play on Nam's end step to start recouping some life from that lifelink. I think there's a copy of Logic Knot in his hand as well.
Yikes.
So life is very difficult now for Namdang.
All right, there's another Solitude from Anuraag.
Nam's hand looks like Force of Negation and I believe another Foundation Breaker, if I saw correctly.
Double check life totals quick.
I'm at 7.
Glorian Reveal being cycled for Anuraag.
How do you
An
like-
unassuming card.
Yeah, I was going to ask how you like that card now. That's another new one we've added to the deck.
It's pretty awesome in this format, honestly, just because 1 mana island cycling, being able to get your triumphs, fixing any color of mana, already very cool. But also just being a draw spell in the late game when these games grind is pretty great. And it's 5 mana, so it draws you 4 cards with up the Beanstalk. It's been a good addition to the decks in Modern that really wanted that sort of early game consistency of being able to hit their land drops.
Oof. Wow, that was just a say go from Nam here. Both players tied at 10 life points apiece, but a second Solitude here for Anuraag.
Yeah, Nam's hand, Foundation Breaker, Force of Negation, and an Oliphant. Oliphant not castable, Foundation Breaker not really doing anything, and Force of Negation staring sadly at these 2 lifelinking creatures and just knowing that it is not it.
And there's that Minamo that you mentioned earlier coming into play for Anuraag here. 4 burden counters on the 1 ring, but lots of lifelink to work with.
Yeah, and I believe there's a copy of Dovin's Veto as well as a Logic Knot in Anuraag's hand, so there's not much Nam is going to do. There's the
I'm going to try, though!
most feeble Shardless Agent attempt, and Anuraag will say, go for it. I have the answer here. Likely
Living
the Dovin's Veto. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
there's
is, and
Dovin's
the
Veto.
handshake.
There is a handshake. That is Anuraag Daas taking down this match here in the Secret Lair Showdown. And you can see him posing with a big card of Brainstorm. Just absolutely gorgeous artwork. And as you said earlier, Mani, 1 of 4 in existence. He'll also get the normal size card to go along with that Brainstorm. But just a massive achievement.
Yeah, it's really great stuff. It's unfortunate for Namdang to make it all the way to the finals of this tournament and just get such a brutal matchup and then have the games go sort of exactly how you expect the games to go between Living End and the 4-color control deck. But ultimately, Anuraag was just extremely well positioned, not just for the tournament, but for this matchup, and really well-earned prize in that promo Brainstorm.
Absolutely. Congratulations once again to Anuraag. Mani and I will see you at MagicCon Chicago next year.